Hello students, today is going to be a very useful lecture as we would be discussing the periodization of the history of English literature, and this lay the very foundation of your preparation for your UGC-NET English literature exam. So after having an interaction with many students, I got to know that students miscomprehend the whole idea of the demarcations of history of English literature into different segments. Students have asked a sort of clarification that what we mean by different ages like Elizabethan age, Jacobian age, Caroline age, Commonwealth, Restoration age, Augustan age, the age of sensibility, then Romantics, then Victorian and 20th century. Here the most important point is that on what basis literary historians make these divisions and to what extent social, political and literary features of a particular age are responsible for this demarcation or the classification. So this video will be a brief introduction of the different periods of the British literary history, and let's move back in time and start our discussion from more than 2000 years ago when Celts or Gaels were there in Britain. So students, these Celts or Gaels were the original inhabitants of England and they were called Celtic people. Now, the first invader to England was Roman Emperor Julius Caesar. So Julius Caesar invaded England twice, first in 55 BC and second in 54 BC. After Julius Caesar, Claudius was the second Roman emperor who launched invasions against the Celtic England and established Roman settlements over there. Romans extended their control over present-day England, Wales and some part of Scotland. From this point starts our first age, that is Old English or the Anglo-Saxon period. The timing of that age was 450 to 1066 AD. Anglo-Saxons were Germanic tribes like Jutes, Angles and Saxons. They established their kingdoms in England and divided England in 7 parts, which is called heptarchy. As far as literature is concerned, so Anglo-Saxon dialect or Latin language were two main modes of writing during that period. Most of the writers wrote religious hymns like Bede, Alcuin, Caedmon and Cynewulf. Some literature was written as anonymous text also, and Old English was the time of oral traditions. The oldest poem of English literature was the epic poem Beowulf, and Beowulf was the story of Germanic tribes during that Anglo-Saxon era, and Beowulf was written in a kind of heroic tradition. So it's a story of a hero Beowulf and how he saved his kingdom. Beowulf is quite a long epic poem with all the important features of Old English in it. Other poems of Old English were short poems like the Seafarer, Wanderer, Dior's Lament, etc. Old English was also the time of prose writing. King Alfred the Great, who was a great scholar and a translator, he wrote Anglo-Saxon chronicles in prose. Old English ended with the greatest event of the history of English language, that was Norman Conquest in 1066 AD. Our next age is Middle English or the Anglo-Norman. Anglo-Norman age or the Middle English starts with a very decisive event of English history, that is Norman Conquest. It was in 1066 when King Harold was defeated by William of Normandy in the Battle of Hastings, and this is called Norman Conquest. So Norman Conquest was quite an essential event in the development of English language also, because from this point French language enters into English culture. French was the language of the ruling class, French was the language of the Normans, and French became the language of the offices also. In this age, we have writers like Geoffrey Chaucer, the famous writer who is the father of English poetry also, William Langland, who wrote Pius the Plowman, John Gower, Confessio Amantis, and other writers who followed Geoffrey Chaucer like English Chaucerians and Scottish Chaucerians, who imitated Geoffrey Chaucer, who were the followers of Geoffrey Chaucer, like James I of Scotland, like William Dunbar, like John Lydgate, Henryson, and John Skeleton, and most importantly Gavin Douglas. And they contributed a lot in order to establish English as a language. So this was the time of early modern English also. Middle English also is the time of travel writings. This is also the time of some prose developments, and of course this was the time of the mystery plays, miracle plays, and morality plays. So Middle English ended in 1500. Our next age is Renaissance. So Renaissance is a big age, student. It started from 1500 till 1660. This is Renaissance. Renaissance is a big term. Actually, Renaissance was an intellectual movement. It started from Italy and came very late in England and in Europe. But Renaissance is a kind of revival of old classical learning. It's a revival of the ancient writers' learning, and it is also a kind of reawakening from the old ages. So it was an intellectual event. It was also a political event when we take into consideration the Reformation, and when Roman Catholic Church was reformed. So Renaissance can be divided into 4 phases. First is your Elizabethan age, second is your Jacobian age, third is your Caroline age, and fourth is your Commonwealth until 1660, when Restoration was there. So Renaissance starts with 1500 AD, and first age is your Elizabethan age. Elizabethan age is the age of Queen Elizabeth I, and she became the monarch of England in 1558. So she was the a great queen, and her time is called the golden age of English literature, and most importantly for English drama. And in this period only we witness writers like William Shakespeare and Ben Jonson, and we have university wits also. So we have university wits like Christopher Marlowe, then Thomas Kidd, Thomas Lodge, Robert Greene, etc. And this was the time of prose writers like Richard Hooker and Francis Bacon. So it's a huge age with huge contributions in English literature. Second is your Jacobian age. So when Queen Elizabeth died in 1603, James I became the monarch of England, and here started Jacobian age. So Jacobian age starts in 1603 till 1625 when he died. And in this age we have writers like John Donne, like Ben Jonson also wrote during that span, and writers like Jacobean tragedy writer like John Webster, Thomas Middleton, and your very importantly Beaumont and Fletcher and George Chapman. So students, after King James I, his son Charles I became the monarch of England, and they started Caroline age from 1625 till 1649. So we consider it 1649. Okay, I will tell you later on why we considered it 1649 instead of 1642. So in 1649, when King Charles I was executed or beheaded by the Puritan leader Oliver Cromwell. 1642 was also very important year during that span, because in that year theatres were closed by the Puritans. Important writers of that age were Caroline writers, Caroline poets like John Suckling, Robert Herrick, and Richard Lovelace. Next is Commonwealth period or Puritan interregnum. Commonwealth starts from 1649 as King Charles I was executed in 1649, and Oliver Cromwell was the leader of parliament during that span. So in general, Puritans were very serious in nature, and they were against poetry, they were against the dramatic performances, and that's why we find very few writers in Commonwealth Age, and the most important writer of that period was John Milton only, who wrote political pamphlets during that time. So John Milton was the major writer. The other writers who wrote prose writings were Isaac Walton, Sir Thomas Browne, Thomas Hobbes, and Jeremy Taylor. Since this is quite a large topic and it's not feasible for us to cover all the ages in a single video, that's why we'll continue with this topic and deal with rest of the ages in our next session. If you want to join my online live classes, then you can call us at the given numbers, or you can WhatsApp us, or you can check the link given in the description box. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Look forward to meeting you in our next video.